Welcome, 7th Standard students. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here for our ultimate social science masterclass. Listen, if you've been flipping through your history textbook, totally stressed about how you're going to keep all these ancient dynasties straight in your head, take a deep breath. You are in exactly the right place. By the time we finish this explainer, I promise you're going to understand the story behind the facts, you'll remember every crucial detail, and you'll be completely ready to ace your exams. We're going to break down the regional kingdoms of early medieval India together. So let's jump right in.
Okay, here's our game plan for today. We'll start with the early medieval kingdoms, meet the mighty Rajputs, cover Ghaznī's raids, dive into Gauri and terrain, travel east to the Palas, and finally wrap up with the Gujara Pratiharas. Part 1. Early Medieval Kingdoms. Now, before we look at individual kings, we absolutely have to set the geographical stage. I want you to draw a mental map in your brain right now. During the early medieval period, India was basically a giant puzzle of distinct dynasties. Down in South India, you had massive powers like the Pallavas, Pandyas, and Cholas. Right in the middle, in the Deccan region, the Rashtrakutas held the fort alongside some smaller kingdoms. But for your upcoming exam, we really need to zoom in specifically on North India. That region was absolutely packed with heavyweights: the Rajputs, the Ghaznavids, the Ghurids, the Pallas, and the Gurjar Pratiharas. Section 2. The mighty Rajputs. The very word Rajput gives us our absolute best clue about who these famous warriors were. It comes straight from the Sanskrit word Rajaputra, which literally means son of a king. Now, historians actually debate where the Rajputs originally came from. Some experts think they were descendants of Central Asian tribes, but the Rajputs themselves? They proudly claim to be descendants of the brave Kshatriyas, the warrior class from Vedic times. So here's the crucial point to lock into your memory for the test. You must know their 3 mythical family lines. First, Suryavanshi, claiming descent from the sun. Second, Chandravanshi, from the moon. And third, Agnikula, the fire family, who believe they were born directly out of a sacred sacrificial fire. All right, pay close attention because this is your ultimate exam cheat sheet. You are going to need to match these specific Rajput clans to their regions and their famous architectural contributions. Let's break it down. The Tomars founded the city of Dilika in the 8th century, which we all know today as Delhi. Then we have the Chauhans, or Chahamanas, ruling around Delhi and Ajmer. Their standout ruler, Prithviraj Chauhan, defeated Muhammad Ghori in 1191. Next up, the Solankis of Gujarat. They built the absolutely breathtaking Dilwara temples at Mount Abu and the Sun Temple at Madera. Moving on, the Paramaras of Malwa, ruled from Dar. Their powerful king, Bhoja Paramara, built the grand Nilakanteshwar temple. We also have the Gahadvalas holding power around Kannauj. And finally, the Chandels of Bundelkhand. Their capital was Khajuraho, which is world famous for its magnificent temples. Seriously, take a mental snapshot of these facts right now. Section 3. Mahmud of Ghaznī's raids. Let's shift our focus to the northwest mountain passes. This is where a very serious wave of invasions began. The man leading the charge was Mahmud, the ruler of a relatively small kingdom called Ghazni in present-day Afghanistan. Mahmud had a huge problem. He needed money to build a massive army and make Ghazni a superpower. And he had heard all these stories about the immense wealth of northern India. So, over just 26 years, Mahmud invaded India a staggering 17 times. In the year 1000, he started by attacking the Hindu Shahi rulers. By 1018, he was raiding incredibly rich temple towns like Mathura and Kannauj. But his most infamous raid happened in 1026, when the great Somnath temple was completely stripped of its wealth. He took all of that treasure back to Ghazni to build a stunning mosque, a huge library, and a museum, before he finally died in 1030. Section 4. Ghori and Prithviraj Chauhan. After Mahmud of Ghazni died, his empire slowly fell apart, and that paved the way for a new, extremely ambitious ruler named Muezzuddin Muhammad, though we mostly know him as Muhammad Ghori. Now, unlike Ghazni, who just wanted to grab wealth and run back home, Muhammad Ghori wanted to conquer. He wanted to build a permanent empire right here in India. And that massive ambition brought him face to face with the Rajput ruler of Delhi and Ajmer, Prithviraj Chauhan. In 1191, at the First Battle of Terrain, their armies clashed, and Prithviraj Chauhan completely crushed Ghori's forces. He won. But students, here is where Prithviraj made a monumental strategic blunder. He made absolutely no attempt to chase the Ghurids out of Punjab. He just let them stay there. That one decision gave Ghori time to regroup, rearm, and plan. Just 1 year later, in the Second Battle of Terrain in 1192, Gauri returned, and this time he defeated Prithviraj Chauhan. It was an absolute turning point in Indian history.
Now, what happened after that defeat is literally the stuff of legend. According to popular tales from that era, Muhammad Ghori took Prithviraj prisoner and blinded him. But Prithviraj had a fiercely loyal friend, a poet named Chand Burdai. When Ghori announced an archery competition, Chand Burdai convinced the Sultan that the blinded Prithviraj was so incredibly skilled, he could hit a target using only the sound of a voice. Ghori didn't buy it, so he ordered Prithviraj to shoot. Just as Prithviraj drew his bow, Chand Burdai recited this famous poetic couplet: Char bans, jo biskaj, ungal aishta praman, ta upar sultan hai, chuke machahan. That translates to, 4 measures ahead of you and 24 yards away, as measured with 8 fingers, is seated the Sultan. Do not miss him, Chauhan. Following that exact sound cue, Prithviraj let the arrow fly, and it struck Ghori. To avoid being captured and tortured, Prithviraj and Chand Burdai then took their own lives. It is a wildly dramatic, legendary end to a very fierce rivalry.
Section 5. The Palais. Okay, let's all take a deep breath, step away from the blood and battlefields of the West, and travel eastward. We're entering a period of incredible wealth and peace with the Pala dynasty. They ruled over what is now Bihar, Jharkhand, and West Bengal. Here is exactly what you need to lock down for your tests. First, the dynasty was founded by Gopala. Definitely write that name down. His son, Dharmapala, is also highly likely to be on your exam. He expanded the kingdom massively and built up an incredibly rich trade network with Southeast Asia. This whole era was just booming with prosperity. The Pala kings were also very devoted followers of Buddhism. They used their massive wealth to build beautiful stupas and generously fund monasteries. Eventually, they were succeeded by the Sena dynasty in the 12th century.
Section 6. The Gurjara Pratiharas.
Finally, let's head back west and see how all these timelines connect. The Gurjara Pratiharas were the major powerhouse ruling parts of Rajasthan and Gujarat. Their absolute strongest ruler was Bhoja, who reigned from 836 to 882. He was so incredibly successful that he conquered the wealthy city of Kannauj and made it his capital. His son, Mahendrapala, kept the momentum going and expanded the empire even further. But, as we often see in history, their successors just weren't as strong, and they really struggled to defend their borders. Remember those devastating raids by Mahmud of Ghazni we talked about a few minutes ago? Well, it all connects right here. In 1018, Mahmud of Ghazni crushed the Pratihara ruler during his raid on Kannauj. And very soon after that defeat, this once mighty dynasty just completely collapsed.
As we wrap up our masterclass today, I want to leave you with a really fascinating question to think about. Based on everything we just learned, if Prithviraj Chauhan hadn't made that one critical blunder, if he had chased the Ghurids entirely out of Punjab after his first huge victory in 1191, how drastically would the entire course of Indian history be different today? It's pretty wild to think about how one decision changes everything. You guys have done a phenomenal job following along today. We covered so much ground, from the mighty Rajput clans to the intense battles of Taran and the wealthy Palas in the east. I strongly encourage you to bookmark this explainer. Come back, listen to my teachings anytime, again and again, whenever you're doing your revisions. If you master these stories, you are going to absolutely ace that social science exam. Keep studying hard, stay super curious, and I will see you in the next one.
Hello there, 7th Standard. A very warm welcome to today's explainer. I am your class teacher for this session, and let me tell you, I am incredibly pumped to help you completely master this chapter on the medieval kingdoms of the Deccan and South India. All right, everyone, settle down, sit up straight, and focus in. Let's get these concepts locked down tight so you can walk into that exam room with absolute confidence. We have a ton of fascinating history to cover today, so let's jump right into it.
Okay, class, let's dive into our roadmap for today. 1. Kingdoms of the Deccan. 2. South India's Big Three. 3. The Imperial Cholas. 4. Chola administration. And finally, 5. Agriculture and Bhakti. Section 1. Kingdoms of the Deccan, the Narmada Krishna region. Now, pay very close attention to this essential fact file on the Rashtrakutas because this is prime exam material. They rose to power way back in the 8th century under their founder, Danti Durga, and his successor, Krishna I. Their capital was Malkhed, that's near modern Sholapur in Maharashtra. Write that down. Now listen closely, because here are your guaranteed exam questions. You absolutely must know that they built the famous Kailasa temple at Ellora and the incredible rock-cut caves at Elephanta.
Also, circle the word Sundhauti inscription in your notes. That's a crucial keyword. It tells us that artisans operated as highly powerful guilds with actual royal charters, and some even had their own armed guards. So the key takeaway here is that the Rashtrakutas weren't just fierce warriors fighting off rivals like the Palas, Pallavas, and Gurjar Pratiharas. They were massive patrons of architecture, regional languages, especially Kannada, and they run a highly organized economy.
I want you to take a mental screenshot of these other major Deccan kingdoms right now. If you can match the founder to the kingdom, you'll easily secure your marks here. Let's break it down. For the Yadavas of Devagiri, remember their founder Bilama in the 12th century, their vast trade wealth, and their eventual annexation by the Khaljis. Next, the Chalukyas of Kalyani, also known as the later Chalukyas. Your key name here is their greatest ruler, Vikramanka, and you must associate them with the beautiful temples at Aihole, Badami, and Patadakal. Then we have the Kakatiyas of Warangal ruling in the 12th and 13th centuries, right between the Godavari and Krishna rivers, before finally falling to the Delhi Sultans. And finally, the Hoysalas of Dwarasamudra in present-day Karnataka. They were led by their powerful king Vishnuvardhan, but they too were eventually absorbed into the Delhi Sultanate.
Now here is a super cool piece of trivia for you. The world-famous traveler Marco Polo actually visited the Kakatiya kingdom. He wrote down that while the rulers were Shaivites, meaning they were followers of Lord Shiva, they were incredibly tolerant. They allowed both Jainism and Vaishnavism to flourish right alongside them. And here's a bonus point for your exams. The Kakatiya rulers were also great patrons of both the Sanskrit and Telugu languages.
Section 2. South India's Big Three, the struggle for supremacy. This perfectly sets the stage for the dramatic, non-stop struggle between three legendary powers further south. To avoid any mix-ups on test day, let's contrast the Pallavas and the Pandyas directly. Here is your memory trick, and I want you to say it with me in your head. Kanchi for Pallavas and Madurai for Pandyas. Got it? The Pallavas hit their peak in the 7th and 8th centuries. They ruled from Kanchi, built stunning stone temples, but were ultimately defeated by the Cholas in the 9th century. Meanwhile, the Pandyas ruled from Madurai. Madurai was an incredible center of learning, and fun fact, Marco Polo visited them too. But eventually, the Pandya kingdom declined in the 14th century.
Section 3. The Imperial Cholas. 4 centuries of power. All right, class, pin your ears back, because we are now entering the absolute most important section of the chapter. We are focusing on the mighty empire ruled from their grand capital of Tanjore.
Let's trace their massive rise. The story starts between 846 and 871 CE with Vijaya Laya. He founds the empire just north of the river Kaveri. Then they have a slight stumble. Parantaka I conquers Madurai, but then he suffers a major defeat against the Rashtrakuta king Krishna III at the Battle of Takolam in 949 CE. But don't worry, they bounce back in a huge way. The real golden age kicks off with Rajaraja I in 985 CE. He rapidly expands the empire and builds a fearsome navy. And then he's followed by his son Rajendra Chola, who takes their power to absolute dizzying heights. I absolutely love comparing this incredible father-son duo. Rajaraja was a brilliant military commander who defeated the Pandyas and Cheras, and crucially, he built a really strong navy that captured parts of Sri Lanka, then called Ceylon, and the Maldives. But then, let's look at his son, Rajendra Chola. He marched his army all the way north to Bengal, defeating the Cheras, Chalukyas, and the Palas. To celebrate, he boldly took the title Gangakonda Cholapuram, which means the one who conquered places all the way up to the river Ganga. And his most daring campaign? When the kingdom of Srivijaya tried to block Indian merchants at the Straits of Moluccas, Rajendra just sent his massive fleet across the ocean, defeated the Srivijaya king, and protected that incredibly wealthy Southeast Asian trade route. Now that is what you call true imperial power.
Section 4. Chola Administration, Managing an Empire. Transitioning from their military conquests, let's look at how the Cholas brilliantly ran these vast territories and developed their magnificent culture.
Their cultural achievements are truly masterworks that you simply must remember for your test. They were unmatched temple builders in the Dravidian style. The absolute standout is the Brihadeswara temple at Thanjavur, built by Rajaraja I, which is actually a World Heritage Site today. They also completely mastered bronze sculpture. The image of Lord Shiva as Nataraja, the Lord of Dance, is considered the finest specimen of Chola art. You might be wondering, how do we know all these exact details today? From their rich historical records, they carved their land grants and conquests right onto copper plates and temple walls. Plus, under their rule, regional languages like Tamil, Telugu, and Kannada saw massive literary growth and crucial translation works.
And this brilliantly illustrates their administration. Think of it like a perfect top-down staircase.
At the very top, you had large provinces called mandalums, which were ruled by governors. Step down one level, and these were divided into districts called Vilanadus, managed by talukdars. And at the bottom, the lowest unit was the local village, called a kurum or a nadu. Oh, and let's not forget, they also had important, bustling towns called nagarams, places like Tanjore and Kanchi.
Now, a major hallmark of the Cholas was their highly advanced local self-government. Basically, every village had 2 assemblies, and you absolutely need to lock in the difference between these 2 terms for your short answer questions. First is the Or. The Or was the General Assembly for common village affairs, open to a broader group of people. Second is the Saba. The Saba was specifically a gathering made up of all the male adults in the village. It was the Saba that was responsible for forming detailed little subcommittees to handle all the nitty-gritty of daily administration. In fact, I want to direct this exact textbook question straight to you. Was the local self-government system under the Cholas similar to our modern system of village panchayats? Well, think about it. Those Chola Saba subcommittees handled the measurement of land, they calculated and collected taxes, they settled local disputes, and they even managed water sharing and irrigation tanks. Honestly, it sounds exactly like what a highly effective modern panchayat does today, doesn't it?
Section 5. Agriculture and Bhakti. Life in the Tamil region. Let's move to our final theme and look at how the everyday common people lived, farmed, and practiced their faith.
Let's see how all this administrative success led to a massive agrarian boom. During this period, the population was rapidly growing, which meant a lot more mouths to feed. So, what happened? Kings and wealthy temples started investing serious money heavily into agriculture. They cleared out barren and forest land, making it perfectly fit for cultivation. They built massive embankments to prevent devastating floods and dug long canals to carry water where it was needed. Finally, they constructed an intricate network of wells and tanks to store rainwater and release it steadily into the fields. This agricultural expansion was huge, and it was heavily supported by the vast wealth brought in by a countrywide network of trade guilds. This era was also a time of incredibly deep religious reform. New sects and philosophies blossomed everywhere. For your exams, you will very likely need to match these specific saints to their philosophies. So remember this. Basava founded the Lingayata sect in the 12th century. Shankaracharya preached the Advaita philosophy. And Ramanuja and Madhava were the key teacher reformers of the Bhakti philosophy. Thanks to these saints, the core doctrine of bhakti, which means complete, absolute, and unconditional devotion to God, became incredibly popular throughout the entire South. Okay, before we finish up today's class, let's do a rapid-fire recap of the North Indian context provided at the very end of your chapter, just so no details left behind. While all this was happening in the south, up north we had powerful Rajput kingdoms. The Tomars in Delhi, the Chauhans in Rajasthan, the Solankis in Gujarat, the Paramaras in Malwa, the Gahadwalas in Kannauj, and the Chandelas in Bundelkhand. This was also the exact time of the invaders from the northwest, specifically Mahmud of Ghazni and Muhammad Ghori, who famously clashed twice with Prithviraj Chauhan. And there we have it, 7th standard. We have successfully mapped out the Deccan kingdoms, charted the meteoric rise of the magnificent imperial Cholas, understood their brilliant administration, and explored their agriculture and religious life. Revise and conquer. I strongly encourage you to use this explainer as your absolute ultimate revision tool. Listen to my teachings anytime, again and again, to lock in that A+ on your exam. I know you are fully prepared to ace this. But before I dismiss the class, I leave you with this one thought. If the Cholas could build an international naval empire and highly complex local democracies a full 1,000 years ago, what other hidden brilliance of medieval India are we yet to uncover in our next chapter? Keep learning with enthusiasm, and I will see you next time.
All right. Hello, my wonderful 7th standard students. Welcome to a very special edition of our explainer. Today, I am putting on my absolute best class teacher hat to bring you the ultimate exam-ready masterclass on medieval Indian dynasties. Listen, if you want to totally ace your social science exam and memorize this history perfectly, you are in the exact right place. We're going to break down all those complicated dynasties, the epic battles, the administrative systems, all of it, so that by the end of our time together, these facts are literally locked into your brain for good. So let's get started.
So here is our game plan for today. Number 1, the struggle for Kannauj. Number 2, the mighty Chola Empire. Number 3, kingdoms of the Deccan. And finally, number 4, battles that changed history.
Let's jump right into part 1, the struggle for Kannauj.
Okay,
Let's tackle a classic short answer question right off the bat, the tripartite struggle. Now, tripartite simply means three-party, right? So you had this massive, generations-long, three-way tug-of-war for power over one specific city, Kannauj. You had the Pallas coming in from the east, the Gujara Pratirharas pushing from the west, and the Rashtrakutas moving up from the south. You absolutely need to memorize those three. Oh, and a quick bonus fact for your exams, the Pallas were eventually succeeded by the Senna dynasty in the 12th century.
Now, you might be wondering, why the obsession? Why fight so hard and drain your empire's resources for just one city? Well, Kannauj was basically the crown jewel of India at that time. It was incredibly wealthy and perfectly located. You see, whoever held Kannauj controlled the rich, super fertile Gangetic Plains, which meant endless food and massive tax collection. Plus, it was a huge hub for trade, commerce, and politics. Basically, capturing Kannauj gave you immense economic power and ultimate bragging rights.
While we're up north, let's look at some really fascinating trivia about the Rajputs that you'll definitely want to know. So the Rajputs claim to be descendants of the ancient Kshatriyas, the warrior class. They trace their roots to different legendary lineages. You had Suryavanshi, meaning the sun family, and Chandravanshi, the moon family. But a really unique one for your exam is Agnikula. These specific Rajput clans believed they were actually the fire family, born literally out of a sacrificial fire. Pretty epic, right?
Moving right along to Chapter 2, the mighty Chola Empire. You simply cannot talk about the Cholas without talking about this legendary father-son duo. For long answer questions, this is an absolute goldmine. First up is the father, Rajaraja Chola. He was a brilliant commander. He defeated the Pandyas and Cheras, built a massively powerful navy, captured parts of Ceylon, which we now call Sri Lanka, and he built the breathtaking Brihadeswara temple at Thanjavur. Then his son Rajendra Chola steps up and he makes the empire even bigger. He actually marched his army all the way north to Bengal, defeated the Pallas, and boldly took the title Ganga Konda Cholapuram, literally meaning the conqueror of the places up to the river Ganga. He even sent his naval fleet all the way across the ocean to Southeast Asia to defeat the Srivijaya king and control the trade routes. Just incredible military achievements.
Now, to govern a huge empire like that, you need serious organization. I want you to memorize the Chola administration like a staircase going downwards. Picture it in your head. At the very top step, the kingdom is divided into provinces called mandalam, and these are looked after by governors. Step down one level, and each mandalam is split into a valanadu, managed by talukdars. Step down one last time to the very lowest unit, the village, which is called a nadu or kuram. Mandalam, valanadu, nadu. Whisper that to yourself a few times when you're revising.
So how did these individual villages govern themselves? Well, the Cholas had this fantastic system of local self-government. Every single village had two main assemblies. You had the which is the general assembly of the entire village, and then the Sabha, which was specifically a gathering of all the male adults. These assemblies would form little subcommittees to handle everything from collecting taxes to sharing water and fixing local tanks. This is a perfect fill-in-the-blank question for your exam, so make sure you know the difference between the and the Sabha. Speaking of fixing water tanks, listen to this actual quote from a Chola period inscription. "Destroyers of the tank will go to the deepest of hell, and one who maintains it will be rewarded with great riches and luxuries in his next birth." Wow. I mean, talk about a strict warning. This wasn't just a polite request. The Chola state took public infrastructure incredibly seriously. And this quote is brilliant because it gives us some deep historical insights. If your exam asks what conclusions we can draw from that inscription, here are your rock-solid bullet points. First, it proves that water management was absolutely vital for agriculture in the region. Second, the state was super clever. They used religious beliefs, the absolute fear of hell, and the promise of heaven to make sure people follow the rules. Third, it shows that maintaining these tanks was the whole community's responsibility, not just the king's. And finally, it reveals a really high level of ecological awareness when it came to preserving water bodies. Okay, on to Part 3, Kingdoms of the Deccan. Now feel free to pause the explainer right here if you need to, because this is your ultimate Deccan Kingdoms cheat sheet. I've condensed the big regional players for you. We have the Rashtrakutas, founded by Danti Durga, with their capital at Malkhed. You've got the Yadavas, founded by Bilama. Then the Chalukyas of Kalyani. Their greatest ruler was Vikramanka, and they built those gorgeous temples at Aihole and Badami. There's the Kakatiyas of Warangal, and fun fact, the famous traveler Marco Polo actually visited them. You also have the Hoysalas with their powerful king Vishnuvardhan, and finally, the Pallavas down south, whose capital was Kanchi. Just rapidly calling out these names and matching them to their main facts is the absolute best way to lock them in for the test. I actually want to zoom in on the Rashtrakutas for a second because they are highly testable when it comes to their cultural contributions. They weren't just fierce warriors, they were massive patrons of art and literature. Under their rule, the completely mind-blowing rock-cut Kailasa temple at Ellora was created. They're also responsible for the famous Elephanta rock-cut caves. And super importantly, they heavily encouraged the growth of regional languages, especially Kannada. If you get a question on their cultural impact, these 3 points are exactly what you write down. Finally, we reach part 4, Battles that Changed History. This final chapter really kicks off with this specific year, 1030. That is the year Mahmud of Ghazni died. Why does that matter to us? Well, his death made the Ghaznavid Empire very weak. And just waiting in the wings was a man named Muazzuddin Muhammad, who you probably know better as Muhammad Ghor. Seeing this weakness, Ghor made his own territory independent again, and then he systematically gobbled up all the old Ghaznavid lands. He was building this massive, formidable power base, and very soon he would turn his eyes toward India.
This leads us directly to the battles of Tehran. Pay very close attention to this timeline, guys. In 1191, at the First Battle of Tehran, the great Rajput ruler, Prithviraj Chauhan, completely defeats Muhammad Ghor. Total victory. But Prithviraj makes a massive, fatal mistake. He doesn't chase the Ghurids out of Punjab, he just lets them retreat. And that blunder costs him everything. Just 1 year later, in 1192, at the Second Battle of Tehran, Muhammad Ghor comes back. His army is regrouped and stronger. This time, Ghor defeats Prithviraj Chauhan, takes him prisoner, blinds him, and later kills him. It is a deeply tragic turning point. So, if your exam paper asks, did Muhammad Ghor's invasion change the course of Indian history? Your answer is an absolute resounding yes. You see, unlike previous invaders who really just came to raid and take wealth back home, Ghor came to stay. The events of 1192 established Muslim rule and set the very foundation for the Delhi Sultanate. It shattered the dominance of the powerful Rajput kingdoms in the north. Ironically, it also led to the political unification of huge parts of India under a single rule, something we hadn't really seen since the Guptas. And culturally, it brought entirely new architectural styles and administrative systems, which blended with Indian traditions to create the incredible Indo-Islamic culture we still see today.
And just like that, my 7th standard superstars, you have officially completed the masterclass. So, are you ready to ace your exam? Because honestly, with the knowledge you've just absorbed, you absolutely are. I want to encourage you to bookmark this explainer and listen to my teachings anytime, again and again, until every single fact is perfectly memorized. But before I let you go, I want you to think about this one final question. If Prithviraj Chauhan had just chased Muhammad Ghor out of Punjab back in 1191, how completely different would the entire map and culture of modern India look today? Keep studying hard, keep asking those big questions, and I'll see you in the next lesson.